everyone, I hope you're okay. My name is Gwen Gibson and I'm a nutritional therapist, a qualified nutritional therapist, and I specialize in gut health. So today in this video for Biomed, I will be talking to you about stool testing and why use stool testing in clinic, why maybe you might want to consider stool testing. And we'll cover 10 of the markers that I use when we're testing your stool, and maybe explain a little bit how they can be useful. So why do I use stool testing in clinic? When you come and see me, or when you work with a functional medicine practitioner, you will receive a health questionnaire where we gather a lot of information about your health struggle. We try to gather information about possible triggers, antecedents, and what we're getting at is we're trying to get to the root cause of your symptoms. And when you use stool testing, you get more of this information, and this information is very tangible and very actionable. And it allows me to give you a more tailored program. It can save time and it can save money as well in terms of supplementing or using supplements that you may not use. So it's a lot more targeted. And for my clients, I also find that it can be a great motivator. It can be a catalyst for change as well. If we tell you to eat such and such a food because it's healthy, it's quite vague and broad. But if I tell you that you maybe should be focusing on such a food because you've got a low level of bifidobacteria, that might talk to you a little bit more. So markers for stool testing. So the first one is, so I use a stool test called the GI 360. And I order the stool test and send it to my clients. And it's basically a question of taking stool sample over 3 days. And it's a bit daunting for some of my clients, but you just get on with it. You just do it. You put it in a little tube and then you send it back to the lab. There's great explanation anyway. And you send it back to the lab and we get the result back within 10 days. So markers for the stool test. Number one is it will test the abundance and the diversity of your gut bacteria. So abundance and diversity, so the more diverse and abundant your gut bacteria is, the healthier you are. This is a marker for health. And we have noticed, or studies are showing that if you suffer from IBS or IBD, you tend to have a lower diversity of gut bacteria. So when we get the stool test back, you get a grading. So it goes from 1 till 5, and you want to be in the 1, 2, and that's the green area. If you're not in that area, when I work with you, we know that that's where we want to be, basically. The way you increase diversity is by eating diversity. By increasing the diversity in your diet, so diversity of fiber that you're eating, and we know that soluble fiber will feed your gut bacteria. And often with IBS, what happens is that your diet can become quite restricted. But what we need to work on often is to broaden your diet with things that are not going to hurt your gut so much. And so things like berries, things like herbs that I know will feed your gut bacteria as well. So number 2 is in the stool test we will check for infections, for bacteria and parasites. And very often for the onset of IBS, for example, and even IBD, there's often one of the root cause can be an infection. So I often ask my clients if they've been traveling abroad and or if they had a bad case of gut infection. So we're checking. So the stool test will check for Giardia, Salmonella, Campylobacter, all of these but an awful lot more of gut infection will show up, and we can choose to address those or not. Using natural antimicrobial. The test will also give us susceptibility, which means that it will give us an idea of what type of microbial, natural antiviral and microbial will work for you. So for instance, oregano, caprylic acid, garlic, berberine. Very often I use a combination of those. Number 3 is Candida. So Candida lives in a lot, in 50% of studies are showing that 50% of us have got Candida in our gut. It doesn't become a problem when it's kept in check and there's less Candida than there's good bacteria in your gut. But when the Candida overgrow and become a yeast, that can become a problem and bring symptoms that are kind of similar to IBS symptoms: bloating, tiredness, muscle pain, achy, brain fog are kind of common symptoms that you find with Candida. So it's a good marker first to know, do we need to address Candida? Is there an overgrowth in your body that can be contributing to your symptom? Number 3, well, that was number 3. Number 4 would be digestion and absorption. So the test will tell us if you have enough of what is called pancreatic enzymes, and it will tell us if you need, so pancreatic enzymes are very important to, it's called pancreatic elastase, and it will tell us if you are breaking down food enough, if you've got enough digestive enzymes. The role of digestive enzymes is to break down the food so that you can absorb and digest properly. And you can understand and appreciate that if you're not doing that properly, you may get symptoms again of bloating. You can also find bits of food in your stool. So it will tell me if I need to supplement or not. Another, number 5, marker would be fecal fats. If you find fats in your stool, that means you're not absorbing fat properly. And that can also contribute to maybe loose stool bowel movement. So maybe there's something we need to look at in terms of your liver function, because your liver is, or your gallbladder is where you will be storing bile acid. So is there a problem there or something that we need to address? Very often there is parasites will also affect the function of your bile production. Number 6, short-chain fatty acids. So short-chain fatty acids, are being produced by bacteria when they feed on soluble fiber. And short-chain fatty acid is really important for health in general and for gut health. The short-chain fatty acids are anti-inflammatory, and they also decrease the pH of your gut in your colon, and it prevents from an overgrowth of bacteria. When it should be slightly acidic but not too acidic. And short-chain fatty acids are anti-inflammatory. So again, really important. There's very often in IBS or IBD an element of inflammation, and that inflammation can create symptoms such as pain. Number 7, talking about inflammation, is an inflammatory marker called calprotectin. And it can, when it's elevated, it can differentiate between IBD and IBS. When it's elevated, it's a sign for me to refer you to your GP to go and check if there's a potentially inflammatory bowel disease, which is an autoimmune disorder. Whereas in IBS, it's a little bit, it's a different presentation. Number 8 is beta-glucuronidase. And it's an enzyme that you produce in your gut, and elevated enzyme in your gut would tell me that you are recycling toxins and hormones as well. And this is something we'll look at in terms of supporting your liver function a little bit more with, if it's elevated, with things of food like broccoli, the cruciferous vegetables, or apple, for example. So it gives me a very targeted actions depending on the results. Number 9 is secretory IgA. So this is a marker for immune function, and it's your first line of defense. and it's SIG as a mucus that line and is on the lining of your gut, and will prevent from potential viruses and pathogen to enter your bloodstream, or again get into the gut lining and create inflammation, which will then be associated with pain and hypersensibility, which is often associated with IBS. And if that is too high, it can mean that you are having, so it can link in with pathogen and bacteria or infections that you've got, because obviously your immune system is reacting to this, to what's going on in your body. And it can be a normal reaction as well to this. If it's elevated, it can also tell me that there's maybe foods that you're not agreeing with, or maybe food that may need to be removed for a little while to bring down the inflammation. If it's too low, that can be a sign that of chronic stress. So it's a good checking point for you to see that it's actually impacting on your immunity. So you don't want it to be too high and you don't want it to be too low. So this, depending on the result, we take action. And number 10 is Akkermansia, which is a lovely bacteria, and Akkermansia protects your gut lining. So the importance of the lining of your gut that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And Akkermansia can also help to produce other bacteria that are essential for your gut function, bifidobacteria, lactobacillus. And a high level is not too good again, because it can mean that Akkermansia are feeding on the gut lining, and too little has been associated with more IBS, type 2 diabetes and obesity. So again, you want a normal, healthy level in the middle. And what can increase, if it's too low, what can increase Akkermansia are polyphenol foods that you find in berries and green teas and cranberries and all the lovely herbs and spices that you can add to your food very easily. So I hope you found this useful. If you've been suffering from IBS, IBD for a long time and you're not getting anywhere with dietary changes and supplements, I would definitely encourage you to consider doing a stool test. It can really be empowering from experience for clients to see what's going on in their gut. It can also be reassuring and take off a little bit of the stress of not knowing what's going on. It's not the be all and all. There's other things going on with IBS sometimes, but it's a good thing to start with, to work with, and it gives you hope that you can get better. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.